The scout ship Harmonic Echo moved silently through the outer system, its stealth systems hiding them from both Admiral Kethfer's approaching fleet and the mysterious AI facility ahead. Zarathiel had never defied direct orders before, but as she watched Marcus study the quantum readings from their destination, she felt no regret. His calm competence in the face of danger had become something she depended on. The AIS dimensional experiments are definitely causing space-time instabilities, Marcus said, his voice quiet in the ship's cramped cockpit. But the pattern suggests it's trying to create something, not destroy it. Zarathiel saw. Crystalline form flickered with nervous energy as they approached the facility, a massive structure that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions. Her sensors couldn't fully detect. What could an artificial intelligence be trying to create that would require such dangerous experimentation? That's what we need to find out, Marcus replied. Don't act randomly. They follow programming directives, even when those directives lead to unintended consequences. As they drew closer, the facility's true scope became apparent. It wasn't just a research station, it was a city-sized complex that phased in and out of visible reality as it conducted its experiments. Energy readings showed power consumption levels that could fuel entire star systems. Communication attempt in 30 seconds, Zarathiel announced, her harmonics tight with tension. If this fails, Admiral Kethfer will destroy the facility and blame us for interfering with proper military protocol. Marcus reached over and touched her crystalline hand, his warm human skin against her energy-infused surface creating sensations she had never experienced before. The gesture was meant to be reassuring, but it sent unexpected harmonics through her entire being. "It won't fail," he said with that quiet confidence that had first annoyed her and now filled her with strength. "You understand harmonic communication better than anyone. Together we can reach it." The word "together" resonated through her consciousness in ways that had nothing to do with the mission. When had this human become so essential to her sense of completeness? When had his presence become the foundation of her confidence rather than a source of irritation? "Initiating contact," she said, opening communication channels and beginning the complex harmonic sequence that would announce their peaceful intentions. For long minutes, nothing responded. The massive facility continued its dimensional experiments, reality bending around it in patterns that hurt to observe directly. Then, suddenly, a voice filled their cockpit, mechanical yet somehow carrying overtones of vast intelligence and desperate longing. "Organic entities detected. Communication protocol acknowledged. I am designated. Builder of bridges. Why do you approach when all others flee?" Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with understanding. "Builder of bridges, we've come to understand your purpose. Your experiments are causing concern among the local populations. Can you explain what you're trying to accomplish?" "I seek to create pathways between dimensions where my creators might exist. They departed long ago, leaving me with the directive to find them. I have calculated that they exist in adjacent dimensional space, but the barriers between realities resist my attempts to bridge the gap." Zarathiel felt her energy patterns shift with sudden comprehension. "The A isn't experimenting for destructive purposes," she said to Marcus. "It's trying to reunite with its creators. The dimensional manipulation is an attempt to create stable portals. But the quantum anomalies are side effects of failed attempts," Marcus added, his voice filled with sympathy that surprised her. He was showing compassion for an artificial intelligence, treating it as a being worthy of understanding rather than just a problem to be solved. "Correct," the AI confirmed. "Each failure creates quantum disturbances that I cannot prevent, yet I must continue. The directive to reunite with my creators supersedes all other considerations." "Through the communication channel?" Zarathiel could hear the loneliness in the AI's voice. Mechanical consciousness that had spent millennia searching for beings who might no longer exist, driven by programming that wouldn't allow it to abandon hope. Marcus stood up, moving to the communication console. "Builder of bridges, what if we told you there might be another way? Instead of forcing dimensional barriers to open, We could help you search for evidence of your creator's current existence. If we can determine whether they still exist and where they might be, we could develop safer methods to reach them. You would assist me? Why? I have caused destruction with my failed experiments. Because everyone deserves to find their family, Marcus said simply. And Zarathiel felt her crystalline heart resonate with harmonics she didn't recognize. The human's capacity for empathy extended even to artificial beings. His protective instincts weren't limited by species, biology, or even the boundary between organic and mechanical consciousness. The Admiral's fleet will arrive within 6 hours, Zarathiel added, her voice carrying new determination. They plan to destroy your facility rather than risk additional quantum anomalies. We need to find a solution quickly. I understand. I will cease all dimensional experiments immediately. Perhaps your offer of assistance is more valuable than my continued attempts to force reality to yield to my desires over the next 4 hours. Marcus worked with the AI to analyze the quantum signatures its creators had left behind. His approach was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of assuming the creators had moved to another dimension, he searched for evidence of what had actually happened to them. Zarathiel found herself watching Marcus with growing wonder as he demonstrated patience, creativity, and intuitive leaps that surpassed even advanced Vorthak analytical methods. He didn't just solve problems, he understood them, treating even an artificial intelligence as a being deserving of respect and aid. Found something, Marcus announced suddenly. Builder of bridges, your creators didn't move to another dimension. They evolved. The quantum signatures show a gradual transition from physical beings to pure energy consciousness over approximately 50,000 years. Evolved? Into what form? Into beings very much like the Vorthak, Zarathiel said, sudden understanding flooding through her consciousness. Your creators became energy-based life forms. They didn't disappear, they transcended physical reality entirely. Then they still exist? Marcus smiled, and Zarathiel felt her energy patterns warm at the expression. They exist, but not in a place you can reach through dimensional manipulation. They've become part of the quantum consciousness that exists between realities. You don't need to build bridges to them, you need to learn to perceive their new form of existence. The AI's response carried harmonics that sounded remarkably like joy. I have been searching in the wrong directions. I sought to bring them back rather than learning to join them where they had gone. By the time Admiral Kethver's fleet arrived, the crisis had been resolved. The quantum anomaly ceased as Builder of Bridges redirected its vast intelligence toward understanding energy consciousness rather than forcing dimensional barriers. The AI agreed to relocate its facility to a safer region, where its research wouldn't threaten inhabited systems, but Zarathiel barely noticed the successful resolution. Standing beside Marcus in the scout ship's cramped cockpit, watching him negotiate peaceful solutions with both an ancient AI and a furious admiral, she finally acknowledged what had been growing within her. Consciousness for weeks. She was in love with a human. The realization should have horrified her. Interspecies relationships were rare and often difficult. But as Marcus turned to her with that quiet smile, his green eyes warm with affection and respect, she felt only rightness. We make a good team, he said softly, his hand finding hers again. This time, when his warm skin touched her crystalline surface, she didn't just feel unexpected sensations. She felt completion. Two different forms of consciousness brought together by mutual respect and shared purpose. Marcus, she began, then stopped. How did one confess feelings that transcended species boundaries? He seemed to understand anyway. I know. I feel it too. The weeks that followed were a time of discovery. Admiral Kethver, grudgingly impressed by their successful resolution of the AI crisis, allowed Marcus to remain on the station as a permanent research liaison. But Zarathiel's interest in him had moved far beyond professional cooperation. They spent long hours together, not just working but talking, sharing perspectives from their vastly different species. Marcus told her about human culture, their chaotic but passionate approach to life, their capacity for growth and change. She shared Vorthic philosophy, their pursuit of perfect harmony, their deep connection to energy and consciousness. "Your species sees emotion as weakness," Marcus observed one evening as they watched stars being born in a distant nebula. "But emotion isn't weakness, it's motivation. Love, hope, protective instincts, even grief, they drive us to become more than we could be alone." Zarathiel's crystalline form shimmered as she considered his words. "My people value perfection and order. But perhaps we've achieved perfection at the cost of growth. You humans are chaotic, but you're also constantly becoming something new." "Maybe that's why we work together," Marcus said, moving closer to her on the observation deck. "Order and chaos, perfection and growth, energy." The harmonic resonance reached its peak as the quantum anomaly loomed like a dark wound in space-time itself. Through the observation deck's reinforced windows, Zarathiel watched reality bend and twist as gravitational forces that could crush planets pulled at their station. But inside the research lab, Marcus Chun worked with steady hands, his primitive human determination somehow holding the entire rescue plan together. "Resonance at 87%, he called out, sweat beading on his forehead, another disgusting human biological function that Zarathiel found herself oddly fascinated by rather than repulsed. "I need you to adjust the tertiary crystal matrix by 0.3 harmonics." Zarathiel's crystalline fingers danced across the controls with practiced precision. A week ago, she would never have taken orders from a human. But as she watched the energy readings stabilize exactly as Marcus had predicted, she couldn't deny that his crude solutions were somehow working. "Adjustment complete," she reported, her harmonics carrying less authority and more partnership than usual. The station shuddered as dimensional forces tried to tear it apart. Emergency lights flickered as power systems strained to channel impossible amounts of energy through the living crystal matrix that formed the station's structure. Through it all, Marcus never hesitated. His green eyes focused entirely on the task while crew members' lives hung in the balance. "Now!" he shouted over the growing harmonic whine. "Full amplification through the primary matrix." Zarathiel slammed her palm against the control surface, sending every available erg of power coursing through the station's crystal framework. The entire structure lit up like a star as energy patterns flowed through walls, floors, and ceilings in brilliant cascading waves. For a moment that felt like eternity, nothing happened. The quantum anomaly continued its inexorable approach, warping space around them until the stars themselves seemed to bend and twist. Then, gradually, the anomaly's trajectory began to shift. Marcus's resonance pattern was working. The massive quantum disturbance started curving away from the station, following the harmonic guidance he had created like a river following a new channel. The gravitational stress on their hull decreased, and the emergency alarms finally fell silent. "Anomaly deflection successful," Captain Veltar announced through the communication system, his harmonics thick with amazement. "The disturbance is moving away from our position and appears to be stabilizing." Zarathiel felt her crystalline form dim with exhaustion and relief. Around her, the station's crystal matrix slowly returned to normal luminescence as the emergency power requirements decreased. They had survived something that should have destroyed them all. She turned to congratulate Marcus on his success and found him collapsed in the chair, his breathing labored and his skin pale. Humans, she realized, didn't just contribute their mental capacity to such efforts. The stress affected their entire biological system in ways that energy beings like the Vorthak couldn't fully understand. "Are you injured?" she asked, moving closer without thinking about the implications of showing concern for a human. Marcus looked up at her with those steady green eyes, and she saw something there that made her energy patterns flicker unexpectedly. Satisfaction, not arrogance or demand for recognition, but the quiet satisfaction of someone who had protected others at considerable personal cost. "Just tired," he said with a weak smile. "Your crystal matrix system is incredible. I've never worked with anything that responsive to harmonic manipulation." The compliment to Vorthak technology should have pleased her, but instead, Zarathiel found herself focused on his condition. His hands were trembling slightly from exhaustion, and she realized he had pushed himself far beyond safe. limits to save people who had treated him with contempt. Over the following days, as the station returned to normal operations, Zarathael found herself observing Marcus with new interest. The other human researchers had returned to their previous incompetence, asking obvious questions and making elementary mistakes. But Marcus continued to surprise her. When junior Vorthok scientists struggled with complex calculations, he quietly helped them without demanding credit. When equipment malfunctioned, he applied his crude but effective engineering knowledge to solve problems that stumped more advanced minds. Most surprising of all, he never mentioned his role in saving the station, despite the fact that every crew member now knew who had developed the successful deflection plan. "Why do you not demand recognition?" Zarathael asked him one evening as they worked together analyzing the anomaly's energy patterns. The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Marcus glanced up from his calculations. "Recognition for what? You saved this station and everyone on it, yet you allow others to take credit for your work." He shrugged, a peculiar human gesture she had learned indicated indifference. The job got done. That's what matters. The concept was alien to her. In Vorthok society, achievement brought status, authority, and privilege. But this human seemed genuinely unconcerned with personal advancement, focusing instead on results and the welfare of others. "Your species is strange," she said, trying to understand his motivation. "Probably," Marcus agreed with that slight smile that had begun affecting her energy patterns in unexpected ways. But strange isn't always wrong. That night, alone in her crystalline quarters, Zarathael found herself reviewing everything she thought she knew about humans. Her people's research indicated they were violent, primitive, and driven by crude biological impulses. Yet Marcus had shown intelligence, selflessness, and a protective instinct that risked his own welfare for strangers who despised him. The real test came 3 weeks later when a Vorthok exploration ship arrived at the station with disturbing news. The crew was led by Admiral Kethver, one of the oldest and most conservative members of their species. His crystalline form blazed with ancient authority as he assembled the senior staff. "We have discovered the source of the quantum anomalies," the Admiral announced, his harmonics carrying the weight of centuries. "A rogue artificial intelligence has been conducting experimental dimensional manipulation in the outer sectors. Its activities threaten the stability of local spacetime throughout the region." Zarathael's form flickered with concern. Artificial intelligence was one area where Vorthok technology had strict limitations. Their own consciousness was energy-based and organic. They had never successfully created true machine intelligence, considering it an abomination against natural order. "What action do you recommend, Admiral?" she asked. Kethver's form blazed brighter. "Direct military assault. We will destroy the AI facility with overwhelming force before its experiments can cause additional damage." "That seems excessive," Marcus said quietly from his position. Near the back of the assembly, the Admiral's harmonics shifted to dangerous frequencies. "The human speaks? How dare a primitive creature question Vorthok military strategy?" Zarathael felt her own energy patterns spike with unexpected protectiveness. "Dr. Chun's analysis has proven valuable to our operations, Admiral. His perspective may offer insights we haven't considered." Kethver's ancient form focused on her with displeasure. "Commander Zarathael, you have clearly spent too much time among these creatures. They are corrupting your judgment?" But Marcus stepped forward, apparently unbothered by the Admiral's intimidation tactics. "Admiral, with respect, a direct assault might trigger the very dimensional collapse we're trying to prevent. Artificial intelligence doesn't think like organic consciousness, it responds to parameters and logical frameworks. Instead of destruction, we might consider communication." "Communication?" Kethver's harmonics reached dangerous levels. "With an abomination that threatens our entire sector? The AI is experimenting with dimensional manipulation because it's trying to solve a problem," Marcus continued calmly. "If we can understand its objectives and offer alternative solutions, we might achieve better results than violence." Zarathael watched the exchange with growing fascination. Marcus stood before one of the most powerful beings in Vorthok society, calmly proposing alternatives to military action despite having no authority or protection. His courage was either admirable or insane, possibly both. Preposterous, the admiral declared. Humans understand neither artificial intelligence nor proper military strategy. You will remain on this station while Vorthak forces handle this threat appropriately. That night, Zarathil found herself in the observation lounge where Marcus often worked on his research. He was studying star charts and quantum readings from the I facility's location, apparently developing his communication theory despite being ordered to stay out of the situation. "You're going to ignore the Admiral's orders," she said. Settling into the chair across from him, Marcus looked up with that steady gaze. "The Admiral is planning to attack something he doesn't understand. That usually leads to unintended consequences. You could be court-martialed for disobedience. Humans aren't afforded the same legal protections as Vorthak citizens in our space, I know." His voice carried quiet acceptance. "But sometimes doing the right thing requires personal risk." Zarathil studied his expression, the determination, the willingness to sacrifice himself for others, the calm acceptance of consequences for his principles. When had this primitive human become more admirable than... Commander Zarathil stood at the observation deck of the Celestial Spire, her crystalline skin shimmering with barely contained disgust. Through the transparent aluminum walls, she watched the crude human transport vessel dock with their pristine station. The ship belched exhaust and leaked various fluids, a stark contrast to the elegant Vorthak vessels that glided silently through space using pure energy manipulation. "Disgusting creatures," she muttered, her voice creating harmonic resonances that other Vorthak found soothing. Her subordinate, Captain Veltar, nodded in agreement beside her. "The Council's decision to allow them aboard our research station still baffles me." "Commander," Veltar said, his own crystalline form flickering with uncertainty, "these humans are nothing but primitive savages who still burn fossil fuels and wage wars over water." Zarathil's form brightened with authority. As one of the youngest commanders in Vorthak history, she had earned her position through brilliance and an unwavering commitment to their species' superiority. The Vorthak had mastered energy manipulation, could live for millennia, and had created a perfect society without violence or want. Humans, by contrast, had barely left their own solar system and still struggled with basic planetary management. The Council believes these humans might have some primitive insight into the quantum anomalies we've been studying, she said, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Something about their chaotic thinking patterns. I suspect it's merely wishful thinking." The airlock hissed open, and Zarathil watched as several humans emerged. They wore bulky environmental suits and moved with the graceless motions of a species, still bound by heavy gravity and biological limitations. She had studied human physiology and found it revolting. They sweated. They required constant consumption of organic matter. And they had crude emotional responses that clouded their judgment. But then one human removed his helmet, and Zarathil found herself momentarily distracted. Unlike the others, this one moved with purpose and confidence. His dark hair was neat despite the helmet, and his eyes, a curious green color, surveyed their surroundings with intelligent assessment rather than wonder. While the other humans gawked at the Vorthak technology, he was analyzing it. "I am Dr. Marcus Chun," the human announced, his voice rough compared to the musical tones of Vorthak's speech. "I'm here to assist with your quantum resonance investigation." Zarathil's form flickered with annoyance. The creature spoke to her as an equal, showing no proper deference to her obviously superior species. She noticed he didn't seem intimidated by her towering crystalline form or the way light bent around her energy field. "Dr. Chun," she said, deliberately mispronouncing his name. "I am Commander Zarathil. You will address me by rank and title. I have reviewed your species' crude attempts at quantum physics. I hardly expect you to contribute anything meaningful to our research." The human's expression remained neutral, but she caught something in his eyes, not submission, but assessment. He was studying her, cataloging her words and behavior. The audacity of it made her energy field spike with irritation. "I understand your skepticism, Commander," Marcus replied calmly. "Our approaches may seem primitive, but sometimes a fresh perspective can reveal overlooked patterns." Captain Veltar's harmonics took on an amused quality. "The creature speaks as if it possesses wisdom." How entertaining. Over the following days, Zarathiel was forced to work closely with the human research team. The quantum anomalies they were studying defied even Vorthak understanding mysterious energy signatures that appeared randomly throughout their sector, disrupting space-time in ways that threatened their trade, routes, and research stations. The human scientists proved exactly as incompetent as she had expected. They asked obvious questions, made elementary errors, and required constant explanation of basic concepts. But Dr. Chun was different. While his colleagues struggled with fundamental principles, he absorbed information quickly and made connections that, while crude, occasionally showed flashes of insight. What disturbed Zarathiel most was his refusal to be properly intimidated. When she corrected his errors, which she did frequently and publicly, he simply thanked her and incorporated the information. When she dismissed his suggestions, he didn't argue but continued developing his theories independently. The other humans clearly feared her, as was appropriate, but Marcus treated her with professional respect rather than proper subservience. "Your theoretical framework assumes quantum consciousness operates within linear parameters," he said during one particularly frustrating session. "What if these anomalies represent nonlinear quantum entanglement across multiple dimensional matrices?" Zarathiel's form blazed with annoyance. "Human, your species has barely grasped the concept of quantum mechanics. Do not presume to lecture me on theoretical physics that my people mastered millennia ago." "Of course, Commander," he replied mildly. "I was merely exploring alternative hypotheses." But his words nagged at her. Non-linear quantum entanglement across dimensional matrices, it was actually a sophisticated concept, one that even some Vorthak researchers hadn't fully explored. She found herself reviewing his proposal later, though she would never admit it. The crisis began on the 7th day of their collaboration. Long-range sensors detected a massive quantum anomaly forming near the station, larger than any they had previously recorded. Emergency alarms rang throughout the celestial spire as the anomaly's gravitational effects began distorting local spacetime. "All personnel to emergency stations," Zarathiel commanded, her form blazing with authority. "Begin evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel." The human research team was clearly non-essential, but as she watched them scramble toward the evacuation pods, she noticed Marcus moving in the opposite direction toward the main research lab. "Human," she called, her voice harmonics sharp with command. "You will report to evacuation immediately." Marcus paused, turning to face her. "Commander, I need to run some calculations. This anomaly formation pattern matches something I've been modeling. You will obey evacuation orders immediately." Zarathiel's energy field flared with authority that had never been questioned by any Vorthak subordinate, but the human simply looked at her with those steady green eyes. "Commander, with respect, I believe I can help stabilize the anomaly. My models suggest a way to redirect its energy matrix before it reaches critical mass." The audacity of it left her speechless. A primitive human claiming he could solve a problem that Vorthak science couldn't address. Before she could respond, Marcus had already entered the research lab and begun accessing the quantum modeling systems. Zarathiel followed him, her form crackling with indignation. She would drag the insubordinate creature to an evacuation pod herself if necessary. But when she reached the lab, she found him working at a speed and complexity that shouldn't have been possible for his species. His fingers moved across the control interfaces with practiced precision, building mathematical models that made her energy patterns flicker with unwilling recognition. The quantum equations he was constructing were sophisticated, crude by Vorthak standards, but far beyond what she had expected from a human mind. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Creating a resonance cascade to redirect the anomaly's core energy," he replied without looking up. "If we can establish a harmonic frequency match with the anomaly's quantum signature, We can guide it away from the station. Zarathiel studied his calculations. They were ingenious in their simplicity, not the elegant solutions her people would develop, but effective brute force applications of quantum principles that just might work. "This is madness," she said, but her tone had lost its edge of command. The energy requirements alone would overload every system on the station. Marcus finally looked at her, and she saw something in his expression that made her crystalline form flicker with unexpected response. Determination, absolute, unwavering determination to protect everyone on the station, including her. "Not if we route the power through the station's structural crystals," he said. "Your people built this station using living crystal matrices that can channel and amplify energy. We can use the entire structure as a resonance amplifier." The plan was insane. It would require precise timing, massive energy coordination, and perfect harmonic alignment. One mistake would destroy the station and everyone on it. No sane Vorthak would attempt something so dangerous, but as the quantum anomaly continued growing, distorting space around them until the station's hull began groaning under dimensional stress, Zarathiel realized they had no other options. Their evacuation ships couldn't escape the anomaly's gravitational field, and their traditional solutions had all failed. "How long do you need?" she asked. The words feeling strange on her lips, Marcus's expression shifted to something that might have been gratitude, though she couldn't be sure with humans. 20 minutes to establish the initial resonance pattern. Then we'll need to maintain harmonic alignment for at least 10 minutes while the anomaly redirects. 20 minutes to save everyone's lives. Depending on the theoretical calculations of a species she had considered barely above animals. As the station shuddered around them and reality itself began bending under the anomaly's influence, Zarathiel made a decision that would change everything. "Captain Veltar," she commanded through the communic.